I'm very happy to be here today with Carole Bloch, who is the Executive Director of PRAESA, and she's also an extraordinary professor in language education in the Faculty of Education at the University of Western Cape. And I think I would like to start by reading the motivation of the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award jury when PRAESA received the ALMA Prize in 2015. With the joy of reading as its compass point, PRAESA opens new routes into the world of books and literature for young readers in South Africa. Through innovative reading and storytelling projects, PRAESA brings people together and brings literature in multiple languages alive. PRAESA's outstanding work shows the crucial role of books and stories in creating rich lives for children and young people. PRAESA was founded in 1992, just 2 years after the fall of the apartheid regime, and it was a response to some challenges in South Africa. One of the challenges was that there are 11 official languages in the country. However, there is a lack, or was a lack, of children's books in most of these languages. And that meant that children didn't have literature in their own language. Another challenge was that the school language is English, and that created difficulties for pupils with other mother tongue already from start in the school. And moreover, there were huge differences between poor rural and township schools on one hand and the more resourceful urban schools. I think so PRAESA, the creation of PRAESA was a response to these challenges, and I think nowadays, looking to Sweden, we can see that there are some similarities to these challenges. Well, we don't have 11 official languages, but we have a lot of languages in many of our suburb schools. So I'm curious to hear how did you face these challenges? And I hope also we will come further on to talk on the lessons you have learned and what we could bring to the Swedish reality of today.
Thanks, Henry. Yeah, you know, I mean, I was an early literacy specialist, and Neville Alexander, who started PRAESA, was he was a freedom fighter. He'd been on Robben Island, and he had a passion also for young children, and he was convinced that children could not learn if they didn't learn in their own language or languages. And we brought that together and started thinking about what we could do. And one of the first projects we did, actually, a colleague of mine is here in the audience, Polisa Gozula. It was called the Free Reading in Schools Project, because we realized that children were not getting any opportunities to read, just to experience what reading was about, to actually hear a good story. And so the Free Reading in Schools project was an attempt to begin that process of saying reading is really important and reading can be joyful and wonderful. But then, of course, as soon as we began doing that kind of work, we could see that if we read in the languages that the children knew, we would finish reading very, very soon. So, I mean, I think then what we've always tried to do is say, we can be flexible, we can do this, it is possible. There are obstacles, but we're going to find ways of publishing books in children's home languages. Now, of course, we're much further along in that process in South Africa, but at that time it wasn't as seen as important, because there was this desire for children to learn in English, which is still there, but it's being challenged a lot more. So we made collaborations with publishers, and there were a couple of willing publishers at the time. The one was New Africa Books, and we created these little books for children, little hands books, because we wanted to ensure that very young children could have books that they would start to experience in their own languages from the beginning.
So access to literature was one key.
Access to literature was one key thing, and also having people who came to share a love of books with children was another. Yeah.
I think it's also interesting that you didn't see a contradiction between literature and reading in the mother tongue language and learning school English.
No, I actually saw it as essential, because the key for children to learn is that they feel motivated from within. And if children are to feel motivated from within, they need to understand what's going on. And they also need to feel emotionally secure. And you feel emotionally secure when you're using a language that comes from your people at home. And leaving your language at home is a very, very difficult thing for a child to have to do. So for me, the urgency, and for all my colleagues, the urgency was to actually stimulate book development in African languages, and it continues to be that. Yeah.
I find this very interesting, because even if we in Sweden have education in mother tongue, I think it's rather common that both that it is questioned and also that we often see a kind of contradiction between the child learning the mother tongue well and learning Swedish language.
Yes, I think sometimes we think of our minds as a jug that's empty, and then if you're pouring mother tongue that's not Swedish maybe into there, there's not going to be room for the Swedish. And it's the same, that argument gets used a lot around multilingualism, but actually that's not the case. There's research to show it's not the case. And in fact, what is really crucial is that children are able to imagine, to think, to develop concepts in a language that they have a grasp of, and then they can transfer that into the other language with much greater ease. So actually the real challenge is, how do you find the adults who can bridge for you? I mean, I'm thinking of a Swedish context now rather than a South African one. How do you find adults who are willing and able to come and be there as interlocutors from their home or the community into the school situation or even the library situation? Because there are willing adults, and you know, storytelling is something from the heart. And so if you can get people who feel comfortable and know that what they bring is welcome in your space, then half the battle is won. And so if you can access those stories that people remember from their childhoods or that they bring from their home countries, and you say, this is important to all of us, we want to learn about this, and we want you to keep sharing with your children or children who speak your languages, but we also want to learn it ourselves. We want to hear your stories. Then you're into a bilingual interpreting and translating situation, which it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be done with a spirit that is trying to connect and trying to bridge the divides that there are. Yeah.
I definitely agree that there is no contradiction between learning mother tongue and new languages from a neuroscientific point of view. I'm a pediatrician, you know. We know that reading and access to language means that different parts of the brain connects to each other. You have to use the vision part of the brain when you see the letters. You have to connect the letters to words, to a sentence, to meaningful words, to a story. You have to refer to experiences from other parts of your life, and all these things means that you need to send neurological signals all across the brain, and you build highways doing this very often. And these highways, of course, are important also when you learn new languages, that they are in place. So I agree from that point of view that learning your mother tongue well makes it much easier to learn the majority language also if you belong to a minority group. But I think it's very interesting with this connection also between, that you mentioned now, between storytelling and literature. Would you like to tell us more about the experiences of this in PRAESA's work?
Yes, well, so one of the big projects that we initiated was as a Reading for Enjoyment campaign in South Africa, and it's called Nalibali. Nalibali means here's the story in isiXhosa, which is Xholisa's mother tongue here. And Xhosa is one of the big languages in South Africa. So here's the story. And our idea was, because we were asked to start a literacy campaign, and we said, okay, we'll start a campaign, but it must be a reading for pleasure campaign. That was built on work that we'd done previously, developing reading clubs in communities in the Cape Town area. And it all is kind of cyclical. It all works together, because if you don't have the adults who are reading with the children and who know the books that are there to read with the children and know the stories, then you don't get something that's happening. So in our reading clubs there was a lot of storytelling. There was also a lot of dancing and singing, and I think the connection with the African oral storytelling tradition was strong. It just happened because that is what was in people's collective memory, if you like, and experience. So storytelling as a bridge to reading makes complete sense in any society, of course, because oral language and written language are part of our communicative efforts, really. So using storytelling, and that was why we called it Nalibali, here's a story, and we said it starts with a story. And the idea is that everybody's story is a valid story. And I think so I'm digressing a little bit, but I think that one of the really important things about storytelling is that we all have a story. And so no matter who you are, how young you are, or how out of connection with where you find yourself you are, you have your story. And so if teachers and librarians and adults know this, then encouraging children to tell their stories and to listen to the stories which are important from where they come, like I said before, and to hear new stories, so that you start to connect your story with, things are different, but it sounds familiar. So you start feeling like there's a ground that feels a bit solid again for you. So storytelling to me is absolutely key to literacy, and in our settings certainly, and I think in the settings where many children come from into new countries like Sweden, storytelling is what is there, and it's that you can draw on to help them to then connect into the idea of reading. Yeah.
To me, as a physician and pediatrician, it sounds very good. I'm working a lot with newly arrived children who often are traumatized, have experienced man-made evil, and the self-confidence is not always very good. So I think also to put the emphasis that you have important stories to tell us about is also strengthening these children and helping to support them.
Yes, and if I can just connect the power of story to learning to read and learning to write. What happens, I don't know about in Sweden, but in many countries, and increasingly so, the different aspects of language are divided up, and children are taught to read as if there were no writing. They're taught to write as if reading didn't have anything to do with writing. And actually one of the most easy ways for children to learn to read is to write and to tell their own stories. So one of the projects that we've done quite a lot of in PRAESA is getting children to feel comfortable enough to tell their own stories, which we then write down. So we create reading material in the language that they also are telling their stories in. And you know, you'd be surprised, even if you've only learnt a little bit of a language, you might find that you're able to write it down for them if there's nobody else to. And I'm not minimizing the importance of having role models who do know the language as well, but there's always a way if you're flexible enough and if you see these things as important enough. So yes, so children's own stories written down, it's an incredible sense of achievement, and also that kind of understanding that I am somebody who has something important to say that others want to hear. And you don't have to make a big thing of it. Not everybody has to listen to it. But if just even your teacher, who maybe you feel very nervous about because they're a bit alien, you don't know them, you don't speak the same language, they say, "Come, tell me, let me hear." You know, it sends an incredibly strong emotional message to them about their value in this new space.
Thank you. I would like to move into another topic. I know that you have worked a lot with bilingual books, with text both in English and one of the other official languages. In Sweden, I think there are a growing number of bilingual books printed now, and of course with technical possibilities, it's also online more possibilities to do that. Is it good, or what are your experiences? Should we do that more? Should we work with them more?
So bilingual books or even multilingual books definitely have a place, and they can be really useful, because if children and even if adults are trying to read together and they maybe know one language and not the other, then it can be a bridge into, it can help them make sense of the other language. So that's one thing, and that's obviously when there's not a huge amount of text. It makes it a very good way of also showing that you value that language in print, because one of the big problems with language is that they have status. And if your language is never on the walls, and if your language is never in the books, it sends you a message that my language isn't really for reading, maybe for talking, it may be for other really important functions, but not for reading. So I think for that reason, it is really important and really useful. And you can create your own books as well, of course.
Do you think it could also improve understanding abstract words or the sense of sense values of words in a better way when you could compare when you read?
Well, yes, because we always, all of us, have to go from the known to the unknown. We can only go from what we know to what we don't know. So if whatever there is that throws light onto what you're trying to get to, has to be a good thing. I mean, some children have to learn language by just being immersed in a foreign language, but it's really hard for them. So if we're trying to make it easier for them, then that's what we do. But also I think it's really important for the children who say speak Swedish to see that the languages, other languages are valued as well, and that they should be learning maybe to speak one of the other languages, because it's showing respect for the children who are here. So it's also to stimulate a curiosity about one another and the languages we speak, and to do a bit of language study in an informal, but just because we're curious and we're respectful and we want to know about one another.
We should have had a talk yesterday also at Frölunda Kulturhus, but your flight was cancelled, so you came late yesterday night. But we had that meeting anyway, and one thing that coming up and was very interesting, I think, was a school librarian who said it's difficult for me to recommend books in the original languages or other languages because I don't know the content. I couldn't know what's in the book or the quality of the book or so. And what came out from the discussion was that maybe we should try to involve the teachers in the maternal languages more in reading and in using books and work together with them. Teachers, school librarians, and the mother of tongue teachers also. I think that was a very good idea to bring back, and that came out from the discussion. Do you have anything more that you would like to bring to us in Sweden from your vast experience in South Africa?
I think, without being negative, I'm not being negative, but I do want to say that deepening or expanding or giving opportunities to develop reading cultural practices, it's hard. It's not an easy task, and it's not any one of our tasks either. You know, you have a certain role to play, but I was just thinking when you were saying that about bringing people together, that is the key, is actually that the experience and expertise of all people involved is crucial for this to work, because if we don't inspire our parents to want to support their children in reading, we also are not going to manage as well as you might with some children, but you really need families on board, you need communities on board, we need libraries, yes, we need people to have a welcoming attitude, but most of all, in fact, we just need to do. There's something, I know it sounds trite, but if you don't do and you tell people what to do, it doesn't work. You have to be doing yourself. You have to be the role model. You want others to be the role model of, you know. So when we started Nalibali, we used to say you have to be able to reach out and touch someone wherever you are. You have to touch a warm body who is getting engaged and doing stuff. And I think that for me, that's one of the keys, is that one must never think that you are going to do anything single-handed, because you just cannot. And it's only when people feel what it is about how powerful books can be and how powerful stories in reading can be, only when they feel it for themselves does it then hit home, and then they can get engaged in it.
So I think it's time to round up, and if I should try to summarize what you say is it's the importance of having access to good literature and good stories in different languages, to connect storytelling and reading, to read for fun.
Yes.
And to tell stories for fun. And the importance of adults to work as role models and to connect and work together.
Yes.
Is that right?
I think so. I think in a sense there's nothing new. Perhaps the digital world is new, and it provides some opportunities for access which we never had before. You can actually access material in any language in a few minutes if it's online. So and I work with students to try and get them to find books online. Now you have to filter through a lot of bad material, but it helps you to start discerning what is good and what is not so good, and what can I use and what can't I use. So I think maybe just to add the digital space, which is not a replacement for books, but yeah.
So I would like to thank you by quoting you. You have said, Carole, we are all storytellers. As human beings, storytelling is how we make sense of our lives. And for those of you who would love to hear more of Carole, I can tell you can meet her and me right after this at the booth of the Cultural Council right over there. And tomorrow at 4 p.m. Carole will be in a panel about multilinguicity as a resource and the importance of literature at Yttrandefrihetstorget, the Freedom of Speech Square. So thank you very much, Carole.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, everyone.